Right now, as you're watching this, you might feel like you're standing at the edge of a cliff with nowhere to go. Your plans have failed, your relationships have crumbled, and your faith feels shattered. But here's what the darkness is hiding from you. God never allows you to get lost without having a plan to guide you home. I know you're here because something inside you is breaking. Maybe you've been carrying this weight for weeks, months, or even years. You wake up every morning wondering if this is all there is to life. You look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back at you. Every step feels heavy. Every breath feels forced. And every prayer feels like it's disappearing into an empty void. But what if I told you that this very moment, this feeling of being completely and utterly lost, is actually God's way of calling you into your greatest transformation? What if everything that's falling apart isn't destruction, but preparation? Stay with me, because by the end of this message, you're going to understand why God sometimes allows us to feel lost. And more importantly, you're going to discover the 7 divine signs that prove you're not abandoned. You're being redirected. There's something profound that happens when a soul gets lost. It's not just confusion or uncertainty. It's a complete disconnection from who you thought you were and where you thought you were going. You've probably been there, that place where nothing makes sense anymore, where the ground beneath your feet feels unstable, where even your own thoughts seem foreign to you. This is what I call the sacred wilderness. It's that spiritual desert where God strips away everything that isn't truly you, everything that isn't truly His will for your life. And yes, it feels terrifying. Yes, it feels like abandonment. But here's the truth that will shift everything for you. God doesn't lead you into the wilderness to destroy you. He leads you there to remake you. Think about every great spiritual figure throughout history. Moses wandered in the desert for 40 years before he could lead his people to the Promised Land. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness before beginning his ministry. Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree, completely lost in his understanding of suffering before achieving enlightenment. Every prophet, every saint, every person who has ever touched the divine has first experienced the profound darkness of feeling completely lost. But why? Why does God allow this? Why doesn't He just give us a clear map, a straightforward path, a GPS for the soul? Because being lost breaks open something in us that nothing else can touch. It breaks open our pride, our illusion of control, our false sense of security. When you're truly lost, you can't rely on your own understanding anymore. You can't trust your own plans. You can't lean on your own strength. And in that complete surrender, in that total vulnerability, something divine can finally enter. I want you to think about your life right now. How many of the things you're clinging to are actually keeping you from your true purpose? How many of the relationships, the jobs, the beliefs, the patterns that you're desperately trying to hold on to are actually prisons that God is trying to free you from? The sacred wilderness isn't punishment. It's purification. It's God saying, I love you too much to leave you where you are. I'm going to love you enough to let you get lost so you can finally be found. But here's what you need to understand. Being in the wilderness doesn't mean God has left you. In fact, it means He's closer than ever. Because it's in the wilderness that we learn to recognize His voice above all the noise of the world. There's a pattern to how God works with lost souls, and once you understand this pattern, everything changes. It's not random. It's not cruel. It's actually the most loving thing God can do for someone He wants to elevate. First, there's the disruption. Something happens that completely throws off your normal life. It could be a sudden loss, a job, a relationship, a dream you've been chasing for years. It could be a health crisis that forces you to stop everything and reevaluate. It could be a spiritual awakening that makes your old life feel completely meaningless. Whatever it is, it disrupts the status quo and forces you to question everything. Most people experience this disruption as trauma. They fight it, resist it, try to get back to normal as quickly as possible. But what if the disruption isn't the problem? What if it's the solution to a problem you didn't even know you had? Second, there's the descent. This is where most people find themselves right now. It's the dark night of the soul, the time when everything feels like it's falling apart. Your confidence disappears. Your sense of direction vanishes. You feel like you're falling into an abyss with no bottom. This is the most painful part of the journey, but it's also the most necessary. In the descent, God strips away everything that isn't essential. He removes the masks you've been wearing, the roles you've been playing, the stories you've been telling yourself about who you are. It feels like death because, in a way, it is. It's the death of the false self, the ego-driven self, the self that was living someone else's life instead of the one God designed specifically for you. Third, there's the surrender. This usually happens when you've exhausted all your other options, when you've tried to fix things yourself and failed, when you've asked everyone for advice and nothing has worked, when you've prayed and bargained and pleaded and still nothing has changed. That's when you finally let go. That's when you finally say, God, I don't understand what's happening, but I trust you. Surrender isn't giving up, it's giving over. It's the difference between resignation and trust. Resignation says, nothing matters anymore. Trust says, God, you matter more than my understanding. Fourth, there's the revelation. This is when God begins to show you what was really happening all along. You start to see that the job you lost was keeping you from your true calling. The relationship that ended was preventing you from becoming who God created you to be. The dream that died was actually a nightmare in disguise. The illness that stopped you in your tracks was saving you from a path that would have destroyed your soul. In the revelation phase, you begin to understand that getting lost wasn't about punishment. It was about protection. God allowed you to lose your way so you could find His way. Finally, there's the resurrection. This is when you emerge from the wilderness as a completely different person. Not different because you've changed yourself, but different because God has changed you. You have new eyes, a new heart, a new understanding of what really matters. The old you couldn't have handled the life God has planned for the new you. That's why the old you had to die. Here's what I want you to understand. If you're feeling lost right now, you're not stuck in the descent forever. This is a process, and you're exactly where you need to be in that process. God hasn't forgotten about you. He hasn't given up on you. He's preparing you for something so beautiful, so perfectly aligned with your soul's purpose that your current self couldn't even comprehend it. Now, I want to share with you the 7 signs that prove God is actively working in your life, even when it feels like He's silent. These aren't just coincidences or psychological tricks. These are the fingerprints of divine intervention in the middle of your chaos. Sign 1. The sudden closing of multiple doors. When God is redirecting your life, He doesn't just close one door. He closes several doors at once, often in rapid succession. You apply for jobs and get rejected. You reach out to old friends and they don't respond. You try to revive relationships and they fall apart even more. You attempt to restart projects and they fail immediately. This isn't bad luck. This isn't the universe being cruel to you. This is God systematically removing every path except the one He wants you to take. But here's the thing, You can't see the right path yet because you're still looking backward, still trying to force open the doors He's closed for your protection. Think about it this way. If you were walking toward a cliff in the dark, wouldn't you want someone who could see to gently redirect your steps, even if it meant blocking the path you thought you wanted to take? That's what God is doing. He's closing doors because He loves you too much to let you walk into something that would ultimately hurt you. The key is to stop fighting the closed doors and start looking for the open windows. Because while God is closing certain paths, He's simultaneously preparing new opportunities that are perfectly aligned with His plan for your life. Sign 2. The inexplicable peace in the storm. This might sound contradictory, but one of the strongest signs that God is working in your life is when you feel a strange sense of peace even in the middle of chaos. Not happiness, peace. There's a difference. You might be facing uncertainty, loss, or major life changes, and logically, you should be panicking. But there's something deep inside you that remains calm. It's not because you understand what's happening. It's because your spirit recognizes that you're in God's hands, even when your mind can't make sense of the circumstances. This peace doesn't come from human understanding. It doesn't come from having all the answers or knowing what's going to happen next. It comes from a deep spiritual knowing that you're exactly where God wants you to be, even if where you are feels completely wrong from a human perspective. If you've been experiencing this inexplicable peace, even just in moments between the anxiety and fear, that's God's way of assuring you that He's in control. It's His way of saying, "Trust me. I see what you can't see. I know what you don't know. And everything is going to work out for your highest good." Sign 3. The intensification of your spiritual hunger. When God is preparing to do something new in your life, He first increases your hunger for Him. You find yourself praying more, even if the prayers feel desperate or confused. You're drawn to spiritual content, spiritual books, spiritual conversations. You're asking deeper questions about the meaning of life, about your purpose, about what God wants from you. This spiritual hunger often increases right before a major breakthrough. It's like your soul knows that something significant is coming, and it's preparing by drawing closer to the source. Don't dismiss this hunger as desperation or weakness. It's actually one of the strongest indicators that God is about to reveal something important to you. He's preparing your heart to receive what He wants to give you. He's tuning your spiritual frequency so you can hear what He's about to say. Sign 4. The appearance of divine messengers. God rarely speaks to us directly. More often, He sends messages through other people, often when we least expect it. During seasons of feeling lost, you might notice that strangers say exactly what you need to hear. A song on the radio speaks directly to your situation. A conversation overheard in a coffee shop contains the exact advice you've been praying for. These aren't coincidences. These are divine appointments. God is using the people and circumstances around you to communicate His heart for your situation. Pay attention to the messages that keep coming up in different ways. If multiple people are telling you the same thing, if the same theme keeps appearing in different contexts, if the same Bible verse or spiritual principle keeps crossing your path, that's God trying to get your attention. Sign 5. The emergence of new desires and dreams. When God is redirecting your life, He doesn't just take away what isn't working. He also begins to plant new seeds of desire in your heart. You start dreaming about things you've never considered before. You develop interests in areas that previously held no appeal. You feel drawn to people, places, or opportunities that don't make logical sense based on your past experience. These new desires aren't random. They're God preparing your heart for your next season. He's giving you glimpses of what He has planned for you. The dreams that are emerging now are previews of the life He's preparing you to live. Don't dismiss these new interests as impractical or unrealistic. Don't talk yourself out of them because they don't fit with who you've been in the past. God is showing you who you're becoming, and that person might be very different from who you've been. Sign 6. The testing and strengthening of your character. Right before God elevates you, He tests you, not to hurt you, but to prepare you. He allows situations that reveal areas where you still need to grow. He puts you in circumstances that force you to develop patience, humility, courage, or faith. This testing isn't punishment, it's preparation. God is developing in you the character qualities you'll need for your next level. He's making sure you're ready to handle the blessings and responsibilities He wants to give you. If you've been facing repeated challenges that are forcing you to grow, that's actually a sign that something bigger is coming. God is preparing you for a level of influence, responsibility, or blessing that requires a stronger version of you. Sign 7. The deep knowing that this season is temporary. Finally, one of the strongest signs that God is working is when you have a deep, inexplicable knowing that what you're going through right now is temporary. Even when everything looks hopeless, even when there's no evidence of change, something inside you knows that this season has an expiration date. This knowing doesn't come from optimism or positive thinking. It comes from spiritual discernment. It's your spirit recognizing that this is a transitional time, not a permanent state. It's God's way of giving you the strength to endure the process by assuring you that there's a beautiful destination waiting for you. Now, I want to reveal to you something that might completely change your perspective on what you're going through. Feeling lost isn't just something that happens to you. It's something that God allows because it serves a specific purpose in your spiritual development. You see, most people go through life on autopilot. They follow the paths that others have laid out for them. They pursue the dreams that society tells them to pursue. They measure success by external standards that have nothing to do with their soul's true calling. And in many cases, they can live their entire lives without ever discovering who they really are or why they're really here. But God loves you too much to let you sleepwalk through your existence. He loves you too much to let you waste your life pursuing things that don't align with your divine purpose. So sometimes He allows you to get lost so you can finally find your true self. Think about it. When was the last time you really examined your life? When was the last time you asked yourself if you're living according to your own values or someone else's? When was the last time you considered whether your current path is leading you toward or away from the person God created you to be? Most people never ask these questions because they're too busy, too distracted, too caught up in the momentum of their daily routines. But when you get lost, when your normal life stops working, you're forced to examine everything. You're forced to question your assumptions, your priorities, your beliefs about what matters. This examination process is painful, but it's also sacred. It's the only way to strip away the layers of conditioning, expectation, and fear that have been covering up your authentic self. It's the only way to discover what your soul truly wants, what your heart truly desires, what God truly has planned for your life. Being lost forces you to develop a relationship with God that goes beyond surface-level faith. When everything else is stripped away, when all your external supports are gone, you learn to rely on spiritual strength. You learn to hear God's voice above the noise of the world. You learn to trust His timing even when it doesn't match your timing. Most importantly, being lost teaches you compassion. When you've been in the dark night of the soul, you develop empathy for others who are struggling. You become a light for people who are walking through their own wilderness. Your pain becomes purposeful because it enables you to help others find their way. Knowing that being lost serves a purpose is comforting, but you still need to know how to navigate this season in a way that aligns with God's will for your life. Here are the spiritual principles that will guide you through this wilderness and into your promised land. Principle 1. Embrace the not knowing. The first and most important principle is to stop fighting the uncertainty. Stop demanding that God give you a 10-year plan. Stop insisting that you need to see the whole staircase before you take the first step. God reveals His plan one step at a time, and there's a reason for that. If God showed you everything He had planned for your life, you'd either be overwhelmed by the magnitude of it, or you'd try to shortcut the process and miss the character development that happens along the way. The not knowing is designed to keep you dependent on Him, which is exactly where He wants you. Instead of asking, God, where are you taking me? Ask God, what do you want to teach me right here, right now? Instead of demanding a roadmap, ask for the grace to be faithful in the wilderness. Principle 2. Listen more than you speak. In seasons of confusion, most people increase their talking and decrease their listening. They seek advice from everyone they know. They journal obsessively. They talk through their problems endlessly. But all of this noise can actually prevent you from hearing what God is trying to say. Make space for silence. Create time for listening prayer. Spend time in nature without distractions. Let your soul settle so you can hear the still, small voice that often gets drowned out by anxiety and activity. God is always speaking, but He rarely shouts. His voice is often the whisper of peace in your spirit, the gentle conviction in your conscience, the sudden knowing that appears when your mind finally stops racing. Principle 3. Focus on being, not doing. Western culture is obsessed with productivity, achievement, and action. When people feel lost, their instinct is to do more, apply for more jobs, meet more people, try more strategies. But wilderness seasons are often about being, not doing. God might be calling you to simply be still and let Him work. He might be calling you to focus on healing old wounds rather than creating new plans. He might be calling you to develop your inner life rather than expanding your external circumstances. This is countercultural and uncomfortable, especially if you're used to being busy and productive. But sometimes the most important work happens when we stop working and let God work in us. Principle 4. Practice radical gratitude. Gratitude in the wilderness isn't about pretending everything is fine or putting on a fake smile. It's about finding evidence of God's goodness even in difficult circumstances. It's about thanking Him for what you can see while trusting Him for what you can't see. Start each day by listing 3 things you're grateful for, even if they're small. Thank God for your health, for shelter, for the breath in your lungs. Thank Him for the lessons you're learning, for the character He's developing in you, for the ways He's protecting you from paths that would have hurt you. Gratitude shifts your focus from what's missing to what's present. It opens your eyes to the ways God is already working in your life, and it creates space in your heart for hope to take root. Principle 5. Serve others in your pain. One of the most powerful ways to find your way out of the wilderness is to help someone else navigate theirs. Your pain has given you empathy, understanding, and wisdom that can be incredibly valuable to others who are struggling. Look for opportunities to encourage someone who's going through a difficult time. Share your story with someone who needs to know they're not alone. Use your experience to point others toward hope. When you serve others in your pain, you discover that your suffering has purpose. You realize that God can use even your darkest moments to bring light to someone else's life. And often, in the process of helping others, you find your own path becomes clearer. Here's something that might surprise you. Some of the most important encounters of your life happen when you think you're completely off track. God has a way of orchestrating divine appointments even in the middle of your confusion, especially in the middle of your confusion. Think about your life right now. In this season of feeling lost, have you met anyone new? Have you had any unexpected conversations? Have you found yourself in situations you never would have been in if your life had gone according to plan? Pay attention to these encounters. God often uses the people who cross your path during wilderness seasons to deliver exactly what your soul needs to hear. Sometimes it's encouragement. Sometimes it's correction. Sometimes it's information. Sometimes it's simply the reminder that you're not alone. I want to tell you about Sarah, a woman who felt completely lost after losing her job and going through a divorce in the same year. She felt like her life was in ruins, like she'd failed at everything that mattered. In her desperation, she started volunteering at a homeless shelter, not because she felt called to it, but because she needed something to do with her time. At that shelter, she met Maria, an elderly woman who had lost everything but somehow radiated joy and peace. Over weeks of conversation, Maria shared how she'd learned to see every loss as God making room for something better, every ending as the beginning of a new chapter she couldn't have imagined before. Those conversations didn't just comfort Sarah, they transformed her. She realized she'd been so busy trying to rebuild her old life that she hadn't considered the possibility that God might want to give her a completely new life. Within 6 months, she discovered a passion for social work she never knew she had. Within a year, she'd started a nonprofit that's now helping hundreds of people transition out of homelessness. But here's the key. None of this would have happened if Sarah hadn't lost her job and her marriage. Those losses, which felt like devastating failures at the time, were actually divine redirections that led her to her true calling. And the divine appointment with Maria only happened because Sarah was willing to serve others while she was still in her own wilderness. Your story might be different, but the principle is the same. God is orchestrating encounters in your life right now that are designed to guide you toward your destiny. The person you meet in the coffee shop, the conversation you overhear, the book that randomly catches your attention, these might all be divine appointments disguised as coincidences. What you're experiencing right now isn't just confusion or a difficult phase, it's a metamorphosis. Just like a caterpillar has to completely dissolve inside its cocoon before it can become a butterfly, you have to go through a process of spiritual dissolution before you can emerge as the person God created you to be. This process is messy, disorienting, and often painful. There are moments when you might feel like you're coming apart at the seams. There are days when you don't recognize yourself, when your old interests no longer appeal to you, when your old coping mechanisms no longer work. This isn't a breakdown, it's a breakthrough in progress. The old you is making room for the new you. The person who got you to this point in your life isn't the same person who's going to take you to the next level. God is upgrading your software, so to speak, and that requires a temporary shutdown of your normal operations. During this metamorphosis, you might find that your priorities are shifting in ways you don't understand. Things that used to matter deeply to you now seem trivial. Pursuits that once energized you now feel empty or meaningless. Your relationships are changing. Some people who were once central to your life are drifting away, while new people are entering who seem to understand you in ways others never have. Your dreams and goals are evolving. What you thought you wanted for your life is being replaced by desires and visions that feel both foreign and deeply true. Your spiritual hunger is intensifying. You're asking questions you've never asked before, seeking depth in areas you previously ignored, feeling drawn to practices and beliefs that don't fit with your old identity. All of this is normal and necessary. God is rewiring your heart, renewing your mind, and realigning your spirit with His purposes for your life. The confusion you feel is the static that happens when your old frequency is being tuned to a new station. Here's what you need to understand. The person you're becoming is worth the pain of this process. The life God has planned for you is worth the temporary discomfort of not knowing how you're going to get there. The metamorphosis is preparing you for a level of purpose, joy, and fulfillment that your current self can't even imagine. Now, I want to share with you the signs that indicate your wilderness season is coming to an end and your breakthrough is approaching. These aren't necessarily dramatic external changes. They're often subtle internal shifts that signal God is preparing to move you into your next season. Sign 1. The return of hope. After months or maybe years of feeling stuck, you start to feel a tiny flutter of hope in your chest. It's not based on any external evidence. Your circumstances might still look exactly the same, but something inside you is beginning to believe again that things can change, that God has good plans for your life. This hope isn't manufactured optimism or wishful thinking. It's a spiritual knowing that your season of wandering is almost over. It's God beginning to awaken your faith for what He's about to do. Sign 2. The clarity about what you don't want. Sometimes knowing what you don't want is just as important as knowing what you do want. As your metamorphosis progresses, you become very clear about the life you no longer want to live, the relationships you no longer want to tolerate, the compromises you're no longer willing to make. This clarity isn't about judgment or rejection, it's about alignment. You're beginning to understand your true values, your non-negotiables, your soul's requirements for a fulfilling life. This clarity is essential preparation for recognizing the right opportunities when they appear. Sign 3. The appearance of new opportunities. When God is ready to move you out of the wilderness, He begins to open doors. But these opportunities might not look like what you expected. They might require you to take a step of faith, to trust in areas where you have no experience, to move in directions that don't make logical sense. Pay attention to the opportunities that keep presenting themselves, especially if they align with the new desires God has been developing in your heart. Don't dismiss them just because they're different from anything you've done before. Sign 4. The sense of divine timing. You start to feel like everything is aligning in ways that are too perfect to be coincidental. Conversations happen at exactly the right moment. Resources appear just when you need them. People enter your life who have exactly the knowledge or connections you require. This sense of divine timing is God's way of confirming that you're stepping into His plan for your life. When you're in alignment with His will, everything starts to flow in ways that feel miraculous. Sign 5. The peace about your past. Finally, you know your breakthrough is near when you can look back at your wilderness season with gratitude instead of bitterness. You begin to see how every delay was protection, how every closed door was redirection, how every moment of confusion was preparation. This peace about your past is crucial because it frees you to fully embrace your future. You can't step into what God has for you while you're still angry about what He allowed you to go through. As we come to the end of this message, I want you to understand something profound. Your season of feeling lost isn't an accident, a punishment, or a delay in God's plan for your life. It is the plan. It's exactly where you need to be to become who you need to be to receive what God wants to give you. Every person who has ever done something significant for God, every person who has ever lived a life of true purpose and meaning has walked through their own version of the wilderness. The confusion you're feeling, the lostness that brought you to this message, it's not a detour from your destiny. It's the pathway to it. Right now, as you're listening to these words, God is working behind the scenes of your life. He's arranging circumstances, moving people, opening doors, and preparing blessings that are specifically designed for the person you're becoming through this process. Your wilderness season has an expiration date. Your confusion is temporary. Your pain has purpose. And your breakthrough is closer than you think. But here's what I need you to do while you wait. Trust the process. Stop fighting the uncertainty. Embrace the metamorphosis that's happening in your soul. Listen for God's voice in the silence. Look for His fingerprints in the chaos. And remember that being lost is often the first step to being found. The message you needed to hear today isn't that your problems will disappear tomorrow. The message is that your problems have meaning, your confusion has purpose, and your God has a plan that's bigger and better than anything you could design for yourself. You're not forgotten, you're not abandoned, you're not a mistake. You are exactly where God wants you to be, learning exactly what you need to learn, becoming exactly who you need to become for the next chapter of your story. Your appointment with destiny is coming, and when it arrives, you'll understand why you had to go through everything you've been through to get there. You'll see that every step, even the steps that felt like you were going backward, were actually leading you home. Until that day comes, keep walking, keep trusting, keep believing that the God who started this good work in you will be faithful to complete it. Your story isn't over, it's just beginning.